All right. Well, first and foremost, thanks, Mirielle, for joining me. I know that we have a lot in common from just our backgrounds, and I really look forward to hearing a little bit more about what you're doing with Denison and how you might help my listeners. If you wouldn't mind just kind of kicking us off with telling us a little bit about yourself, your background, and take it from there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me today. I love talking about what we do here at Denison Yachting. I'm originally from the Midwest. I grew up in Indiana and then lived in Wisconsin for 10 years, where I got into the real estate industry through doing mortgages and ended up moving to Miami because I was like, why am I doing real estate in a state where I could do way more, like in South Florida? It's the same work, but much bigger payoff, and I get to live next to the ocean. But we had this little hiccup in like 2007, 2008, 2009, where we had a major recession, especially affecting the real estate market. And during that time, I took my boat, which at the time I had a 50-foot Sea Ray, and I became a yacht charter specialist. I took people out boating. I was one of only four yacht charter companies in South Florida at the time, or at least in Miami Beach area. So I learned a lot about the boating industry, the charter industry, and then shortly thereafter, I met my husband, Mike, who has now been a yacht broker for 20 years, and we decided to start working together. But I'm active here in Miami Beach and have been for nearly 20 years. And then a couple of years ago, the mayor of Miami Beach, Dan Gelber, named me the woman worth knowing here.
You are definitely the person to know down there. Can you tell me a little bit about the things that you do to serve your community?
Yeah, so I spent many, many years serving as the real estate chair and the Women's Business Council chair for the Miami Beach Chamber. I sat on the board of governors there. At one point, I was the co-chair of the Pillar Trustee Board. I've been active with the Greater Miami Chamber, the Coral Gables Chamber, BNI for 13 years. I'm now with a group called Provisors. I sat on the board at Mount Sinai, our hospital. And my most favorite thing is during COVID, me and some other local ladies started a giving circle group called 100 Plus Women Who Care. And we're currently at 132 members. And it's an organization where we give exposure to hyper local nonprofit charities that are doing really amazing things in our community, but like hardly anybody's ever heard of them. And every woman commits $100. Then whichever group we pick for that quarter gets $100 from 132 women. And that's over $13,000 over these small charities. It does amazing, amazing things. So that's kind of like my big baby that I'm working with.
I love that. That's such a good idea too, because when you have that collective impact, everybody buys in. It's really fun. I feel like giving can become contagious, and that's super fun. Well, good for you guys for setting that up. Can you tell me a little bit about the clients that you typically serve with Denison?
Absolutely. Me and my husband, Mike, personally can kind of help anybody. I know that sounds crazy, but we truly believe that all boaters know other boaters. You know, you could be anywhere in the world in your boat and you're pulling up to a marina, and I don't care what everybody else is doing on the dock. They're going to lay down what they're doing. They're going to come up and help you with your lines. That's just the boating community. So we love meeting boaters, whether they're center console owners or cruisers or sport fish or sailors, anything really. Obviously we prefer to sell mega yachts and super yachts, but you can come boating here in Miami any day, especially on the weekends. You'll see a big 100-footer, maybe a 150-footer anchored out in Biscayne Bay, but it'll have a couple of smaller cruisers, maybe in a couple of small center consoles tied up to it, because even the little boaters know big boaters. But as I said, I used to be a charter owner. So at that time, I had a 50-foot Sea Ray. We've had center consoles that we've owned. Mike, when he still lived in New York, had a wooden ketch sailboat that he completely gutted and remodeled. And it was an absolutely gorgeous museum-worthy boat. So he's had sailing in his blood forever. And then he worked for the moorings for many, many years, where he sold catamarans and sailboats all over the world. And now, we pretty much can help anybody because we just have so much experience with all different kinds of boats between the two of us. And he's actually sold the two largest ever outer reefs built, which they're built in Taiwan, but headquartered here in Fort Lauderdale. Beautiful, beautiful boats that have an amazing following. Their clients are very loyal. So we were very thankful, like I said, to have sold two of their largest yachts they've ever built.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. Yeah, I know that if you get into the boating space, there's so many different avenues you can choose. So that's really cool. So, we learned a little bit about your background. I'd love to hear more about what made you make the switch from being in the real estate mortgage space to kind of building your charter space, building your charter company, excuse me, and then now being a broker. So tell me about that a bit.
Yeah, like I said, the charter thing just kind of came out of nowhere. I had moved down here from Wisconsin to continue my journey in the real estate and mortgage world. And when the market just imploded, I was like, oh my God. At the time, I owned 2 condos in Miami Beach and the boat. And I was like, how am I going to make my mortgage payments? And I decided I was going to go out and take these boats out and take people out that are here staying at hotels, luxury hotels, and help them have a great time. I fell in love with it, and then I met Mike, and I started working with him, not full time, but part time. Whenever he would go to boat shows, we would go together, and I would just kind of help, keep all of his clients in line and make sure that we had time for him to meet with each and every one of them. And then during COVID, we were sitting across the table from each other. He's selling yachts, and I'm helping my real estate agents because I was the CEO of a real estate company here in Miami Beach at the time. So I had 250 agents that reported
It's
to
a
me.
lot of agents.
I know, I know. Way more than possible. But anyway, I'm like, I could put all this effort that I put into these agents into the yacht brokerage with my husband and help him with tools and systems to make sure that clients don't fall through the cracks, that they're being communicated with properly. And that's really what separates Mike and I from most other yacht brokers is we are a true team. You get the two of us for the price of one. He's the nuts and bolts of all thing yachts and boats, and knows more about boats when you walk into him than pretty much anybody else. And then I just kind of keep the ship running with the communications, the networking, the relationship building, follow up and follow through. And so we each have our tasks, and it's just worked out perfectly where we get to work together, but for the same goal.
Awesome. Awesome. And so pretty much on that same topic, let's just talk about kind of what you're seeing in the market, right? Because, obviously you guys have a ton of experience, but really a lot of the people that will be listening to this, maybe they're yacht owners currently, maybe they're considering it. So do you mind just sharing a little bit about your outlook on the market, kind of what's going on?
Well, during COVID, like a lot of other things, whether it was swimming pools, RVs, boats went crazy. For the first time ever that I can ever remember, people could buy a boat and sell it 6 months, a year, 2 years later for the same price they bought it for, or even more in some cases, because everybody needed a way to socially distance, but yes, still do things with their family. You couldn't travel, there was nowhere to go. So the boats went crazy. And now we really expected there to be like kind of this mass exodus of people getting out of boating, but we have not seen that. We haven't seen like all of a sudden this dump of everybody going, okay, we did that for a couple of years. Now we're going to go back to traveling. So it's been a little interesting to see how many people have actually stayed in boating, but it has slowed because everybody has their boat now. um, but I think part of that is just due to the economy. You have interest rate issues, sometimes financing issues, obviously less liquidity because of the recession. People's portfolio was down a little bit, but it's definitely slowed. We do have inventory. We do have buyers, but it's just finding the right boat for the right person right now.
Sure. Yeah. And that definitely is going to be something you want to make sure you're, creating that custom solution for that buyer, right? Because everybody has their preference and, you may have inventory, but it's all about finding that right boat, right? So
Look, the thing that it seemed like most people wanted during COVID was kind of that 60 to 80 foot range of a motor yacht where you could have a nice larger group of your friends and family again, where you can socially quarantine, maybe, do some real travel with it as much as possible if you could get into other countries. But that's where there's still some lagging is that 60 to 80 foot motor yacht.
see it's kind of like that perfect middle ground where you're able to get into most marinas and you're not worried about finding a slip. Obviously, we touched base on the inventory component. What if I were to be thinking about buying a boat, what would be some of the things that you think would be impactful for me to know?
Well, two of the things that we're experiencing right now, at least in South Florida, I can't say for the rest of the country, but we're having insurance issues, and then we're having lack of storage or marina slip issues. So those are two very important things. So you decide, let's say you've made a lot of money, now's the time you're finally going to go buy that boat. You're looking at pricing, you've looked at financing, whether you're going to pay cash or financing, all that sounds great. And all of a sudden, you're getting ready to get closer to closing. You start insurance shopping. And now you're having troubles getting insurance because the insurance has
Yep.
gotten really difficult, especially because of hurricanes in Florida. Insurance carriers are requiring that you maybe have a full-time captain. Even if you're a full-time licensed captain, they generally still want to see that you have a captain that's going to maintain the boat should a storm come this way. We've seen other carriers say that you can't stay here no matter what. You must move the boat 100 miles outside of the cone, which is nearly impossible. And then, like I said, we are also having marina issues. So you decide you're going to buy your boat, everything's going through just fine, and you haven't figured out where you're going to put it yet. We're really lacking in marina space here. So those are two things that you really need to search out and make sure you know before you sign on the dotted line to buy that.
Definitely can speak to the insurance component. For us, when we have a client that we take on for their portfolio, if they have a yacht, it can be very challenging because the history follows the boat, which makes sense, right? So there's been any issues with the boat in the past, those things are going to influence that insurance carry cost. It makes a lot of sense, when you have Hurricane Irma come through and knock out hundreds of millions of dollars worth of boats, it's going to have an impact on your insurance.
Absolutely. Well, it's funny that you mentioned Irma because one of the other trends right now we're seeing is a lot less new boat buying. So in the past, you would have, especially at the boat shows, people would go to boat shows. Some people are going and looking at brokerage boats. They're going to buy a used boat. They're perfectly fine with that. But the big thing to see at boat shows was always new boats. And they still have a little bit of inventory at the boat shows, but nothing that you're going to be able to say, okay, I like that boat. I want to ride an offer on it and take it with me next week. It just doesn't happen anymore. Basically, what happened during Irma was, thousands and thousands of boats were destroyed. So that was in 2017. They were just starting to kind of rebuild to replace those. Now, remember, there's still people wanting new boats, but now you're just replacing the ones that were destroyed when in 2020, of course, we have COVID. So now that shut down the industry again when the manufacturers were finally able to open back up and bring people back to work. Like everywhere else, nobody wanted to go back to work, or they really, really struggled with staffing issues. And then on top of that, you have the supply chain issues. Once boats were finally ready and able to be built, they were missing one little component or three or four little components. So they're still to this day are boats that will look like they're perfectly ready to go, but they're missing something that you just can't let it go because it's a safety issue or a mechanical issue or something like that. So it's just been one thing after another hitting the boating industry since 2017.
Gotcha. Yeah, I could definitely see that being really frustrating, as somebody who's looking to buy a boat, you're dealing with all of the backlog, which, I think from my perspective, by buying a used boat, you're also getting a boat that's already been broken in. They've likely already identified some of the warranty issues and had those remediated. So you're not having to deal with all those fun things that come after buying a brand new boat. What are some of the other things that you're seeing in the market?
So one of the other things I think that is coming out recently is people want to buy a boat and then they immediately want to also put it into charter. We've seen that a lot in Miami. I doubt if it's something that's going on as much in the rest of the country, but so many people came to Miami because we were open during COVID and they came here and to spend their money. We had the hotels open and then they were going to charter boats. So many people saw, an opportunity here. So I'm going to buy a boat. I'm going to also put it out into charter fleets to earn revenue on it. But the problem is now we have hundreds of these charters. Some are legal, some are illegal. And then you have people thinking that, oh, this putting my boat into a charter business is going to, give me revenue and I maybe quit my job and just be a charter boat owner. And it just doesn't work that way. I mean, you're lucky if you cover some of your cost of ownership, but the liability that goes on, understanding the laws, the Coast Guard laws, and then every city and state, county even can have different ordinances. You've got to go through a bid process in some cases to get an approval to do these charters, and that's why so many people do them illegally. So if you're thinking about putting your boat in a charter, I think it's really important to have that conversation with somebody that understands charter before you just think, I'm going to buy a yacht. I'm going to use it a few times a year, and the rest of the time I'm going to put it in a charter, and it's going to make me money, because it just doesn't work that way.
Sure. Yeah, you're kind of you're hoping to offset all those costs. We joked earlier in a previous conversation about just slip fees. I mean, the
Yeah.
craziness that we're seeing in these marinas due to a lack of capacity. And yeah, I mean, if you think that this will be mailbox money, that you're very sorely mistaken. So yeah, that makes a
I
lot of
mean, you
sense.
couldn't go invest in any other kind of business without knowing anything about it. Why do you think, if you don't know anything about owning a yacht or chartering a boat, that you can just suddenly do that? And it seems to be quite the trend these days.
Sure, sure. Well, so if let's say you're not looking to potentially go out tomorrow and buy a boat, but you're thinking about potentially down the road, maybe the next 3 to 5 years, what it might look like. What would be something that you would recommend to somebody considering that?
So, a hot topic lately seems to be solar and electric boats. I mean, they're definitely becoming more popular. It's not like a Tesla. Boats don't glide across the water. They have to have propulsion. So it's a little bit different. But I think one of the trends we are seeing for sure is more yachts going towards the generator having being electric and come from solar. To me, that's when the diesel smell and those things that you don't want is the most irritating. When you're using your generator, when you're anchored out with all your friends, and you can smell that diesel smell coming off the generator. So even if these yachts just have enough solar and batteries to run the generator, to me, that's a huge, huge benefit.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And there's so much maintenance that comes along with having the generator. I remember dealing with my engineer. We were looking for ways to, manage the operation or the cost of operations for the boat. And I said, well, the marinas are so expensive per day. Just go anchor off somewhere and run the generator. And I didn't realize that you have to service them ever so many hours, and it's more work and puts more wear on the thing. So switching to an electric one would be great. I think that that's an excellent idea.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can even use some of these newer electric boats, like your green lines per se, and silent yachts, which is a catamaran that's all solar powered. But even if and they do a hybrid, they mostly do a hybrid. I don't think Silent Yachts does, but Greenline does. They'll do a hybrid for when you do need that propulsion, you need to go faster, you need to use your diesel engine. But one of the things I like about them, let's say you're behind your home, you turn it on, and you got to go past all these other people's home in canals with marine wildlife and things like that. If you did all that area where until you got out into open water under electric, and then only use your engines when you were, offshore, and then when you anchored, you were also using electric. I mean, not only is that better for the planet, it's better for your neighbors, it's better for marine wildlife. So I definitely think a lot of people have talked about getting into boating that said they never would, that were very, green, resiliency, thought minded, and things like that. And now they're seeing these new boats, then they're like, well, maybe I can do this.
Well, maybe that, one of the things that our government should do is start offering tax credits for electric boats. I think we got it for the cars, so let's make it for the boats. I think that's great.
Put you in
Um,
charge of that. It's becoming so popular. So I am partnering up with this company that's building a new eco lodge like place down in the Bahamas. They've actually bought a huge portion of an island down there where all the homes will be solar power ran. They're going to use recycled water, and you can like buy plots down there. They'll pre-build these houses this way, and then they're going to have access to these silent yachts. So your home will be like that. And again, it'll be a second home. Nobody's going to live there full time. And then they'll have these silent yachts available to go on as part of your membership. And you can go island hopping around the Bahamas and the Exumas. They're close to the Exumas. And know that you're not hurting the planet, which is pretty cool.
yeah. Well, and that's so impactful down there too. You don't want the coral being impacted, right, by all the emissions from the boat. So that makes a lot of sense. Would you mind sharing, if you don't mind, what that organization is that you're looking to
Oh, yeah,
partner
it's
with?
called Kiama. It's KI apostrophe AMA. Again, it's in the Bahamas. You can look it up or certainly reach out to me. Since I do still have my real estate license, I'm going to try to be helping them, get them some people that are interested just from my past days. But really, I'm trying to build out those relationships around getting people that are yacht owners or that want to have that kind of experience but don't want to own a yacht, just like my charter clients, to go down there and check it out. It's really
Yeah.
beautiful what they're doing there.
Yeah, I love that because not everybody wants to be on the boat the whole time, right? They want to maybe go out and enjoy a night on the water, but not be 3 or 4 days out at anchor or in a marina. So yeah, that's a great option. Maybe tell me a little bit about how one might go about getting a charter. Do we just go online and fill out a form? Is it something where we connect with you directly? What does that process look like?
Yeah, I mean, you could connect with me. We start out with, where do you want to go? I mean, do you want to go to the Amalfi Coast? Do you want to go to the Keys? Do you want to go to the Bahamas or the Caribbean, Virgin Islands? Do you want to do Croatia or Spain and Ibiza? The Galapagos Islands? I mean, Alaska. It's really endless where we have yachts, literally all over
Okay.
the world. So once we discover an area that you want to go, then we start to talk about budget. There can be some places where you can get a vessel for 6 to 8 people for as low as in the $30,000 range. And then, of course, we know we have vessels that go up to over $1 million for a week. So there's a little bit of everything in between. Generally, you're capped at 12 people, but let's just say you find, I don't know, the perfect vessel for $6,000 or $60,000 for the week, and it's for 12 people. That's $5,000. Now that's your vessel and paying your captain and crew. From there, we do what's called kind of like your sludge fund, and it'll be 35% of whatever the base price of the vessel was. So 35% of $60,000 will go into an escrow account. And how much you use of that depends on what you decide to eat and where you decide to go, because that fund goes towards your fuel and towards your provisioning. So if you're going to drink uh, Dom Perignon, Dom, get it?
Yeah, I know. Thank you. Thank you.
Steak, lobster, you're going to spend a big portion of that fund. But if you have a lot of kids with you and you're doing hamburgers and hot dogs, and you're not, and I don't know, Kettle One vodka instead of Dom Perignon, then you're not going to use as much. If you stay at anchor at islands that are kind of closer by, you're not going to use as much fuel. But if you decide, well, we want to go to this island way over here and it's going to take us 6 hours to get there, where you're going to use a lot more of the fuel. So you really customize how much you spend and what your experience is going to be. We provide you with all of those options, but it's really up to you. But we'll do a customized experience, like where we actually speak with the captain and maybe one of the crew on board, find out what days do you want to go out to dinner on land, and you'll go out those nights. And then what days are they to be prepared to have breakfast and lunch for you, or just dinner, maybe dinner and breakfast because you're going to have lunch while you're out on an excursion or something. But we really customize it to the individual, and it can be pretty much anywhere in the world.
Gotcha. That's really great to know. You guys
Yeah,
have that international.
it's like maybe, so like I said, $5,000, just for the base, and then let's say another $2,000 or $3,000 a person for that. But for you to have a luxury experience on a yacht where you are taken care of, I mean, every little thing you need, and that includes pretty much all your food, your drink. You've got kayaks, you've got wakeboards, you've got
The
scuba
jet
gear,
skis.
jet skis, yeah, tenders that can drive you all around to the little places in the islands. I mean, it's an experience that if you've never had, you should splurge and do it sometime.
Yeah, I'll say from my own experience on a yacht, just the level of care that the stewardess and all of the staff members exhibit. I mean, really, it's like you're at the highest end hotel or resort that you can imagine, right? They're always thinking about making sure your experience is optimal. That's definitely great to bring up. I know that it depends on everybody's preference, but I want to go to the best place that you could think of. Where would it be?
Well, I mean, not that this is new, but I mean, I definitely think, going to Greece is perfect because you're right there in the middle of everything. You're right by the Adriatic Sea, where you can go to the Amalfi Coast, you can go to Croatia, you can go to Turkey, all around the southern coast of Italy. You can go over to Sardinia, and there's just so many places you can go from there that are so absolutely beautiful. But I do love the Galapagos. So I personally haven't been there, but I love the itineraries. I love the animals that you see. The marine life there is just so spectacular. So it's not as much of a party scene. It's more for somebody who really wants a wildlife expedition, kind of like, going to Africa for safari, except for
Yep.
marine life, and island animals and birds you've never seen anywhere else in the world. So both
That's
of them.
really cool. Yeah, I love both of those places, right?
Exactly.
Because you can, and that's what I love about what you do is that really you're creating experiences for your clients that real are super unique, and it allows them to experience the beauty of our world.
Yeah, and some of my favorite people to sell yachts to are those that are going to do the Great Loop. And if you love
I'm not
Americana,
familiar.
it's so cool. I mean, you can get a nice trawler. It's like living on a home, because a trawler, you're not going down below so much. Everything's like on the main level. It's like a real living room and a real kitchen. And you just, you can start off in Florida, go all the way up the East Coast, and you go in through New York, through the river systems, then through the Great Lakes, and then down the Mississippi River. And you can stop in all these beautiful American cities along the way. And what a cool experience that could be too. And a lot of people will do that. They buy the boat, they do that for a year or two. And then they sell the boat afterwards. They're like, we've done that. It's very common for the Great Loop people to buy a trawler, own it for 2 years, and then sell it to the next person who's ready to have that great experience. So while Greece and all these other things sound super cool, we have a lot to experience just in our own backyard.
Well, very cool, Morel. Well, was there anything else that you'd like to share in general?
Well, I just wanted to talk about one other trend that we've seen coming out in the last few years, and it's with these explorer type yachts because yachting has become so popular. And all these locations that you and I just talked about, they're overrun a lot of time with so many yachty and boaters. That the people who are true yachters, they're kind of burnt out on those places. They're like, what can we find that's new? But we need a different kind of vessel to get there. So we have these new explorer type yachts. Benetti has a new one, and my favorite is New Marine because they came out with what's called the 22XP, and it's about a 74-foot, and they call it, like the entry level Explorer. But with these, you can go like down into the Arctic, get closer to really cold weather, places that you can go that you can't go in a regular yacht because of the shape of the hull and the way they're designed. You could do Alaska or anywhere along the northwest coast of Canada, where there's just thousands and thousands of islands out there that you can visit and see. And again, totally different kind of wildlife. The kind of whales you see there are going to be different than what you see like down in the Caribbean here or anything. So it's just these new Explorer yachts are something to be looked at. And the thing that I think is making them so popular is, unlike the Explorer yachts back in the day, where it was mostly men, these Explorer yachts are now designed inside like a regular mega yacht. So the women love them too.
Thanks again, Morel, for coming on and sharing a little bit more about what you do with Denison and just your story. I always think it's very fascinating to see about all the places you can go in the world and enjoy. If our audience wants to maybe get in contact with you or learn more, where would be the best place to send them?
Awesome. I really appreciate that, Dom. So it's Mirielle, Mirielle at DenisonYachting.com. My husband and I are located at the Miami Beach Marina. And all you got to do is give us a shout, 305-798-2393, and we're happy to help. Or you can find me on LinkedIn.